So we'll start with the norms. The grace will be given to us by Rita, the lawyer toast, the lawyer toast by Belina, the 4A test by Pauline, the goals of Rotaract by Vice President Kevin. So are those people available? Rita?
Yes, I'm available.
Yes, the grace, please.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking, but I think we'll be able to get you. Guys, please remember to mute your mics when you come in. Thank you.
The grace, what we have and what we are about to receive, may we be ever thankful and mindful for the needs of others. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Thank you very much, Rita. The lawyer toast by Belina.
Hello, everyone. Let's toast to the good health of the President of the Republic of Uganda.
To His Excellency,
the President
of the Republic of Uganda. Thank you very much. The 4A test by Pauline. Is Pauline around? Is she online? I do not see Pauline. Oh, Pauline Awire. Is she around? I don't see her. I'll ask IPP of the Rotary Club of Mulago and one of our newest members, Pauline Dagire, to give the 4A test.
I thank you. I'm a group of Retractors, so we shall recite it together. Of the things we say or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you very much, ladies. That was wonderful. I like the style. I could hear Past President Blessing's voice in there. I'll ask Vice President Kevin to take us through the goals of Rotaract.
Thank you, President. The goals of Rotaract are as follows. First, to develop professional and leadership skills. Second, to emphasize respect for the rights of others, promote ethical standards, and the dignity of all useful occupations. Third, to provide opportunities for young people to address the needs and concerns of the community and our world. Fourth, to provide opportunities for working in cooperation with sponsoring Rotary clubs. And lastly, to motivate young people like Toma Yebade, who is not very young, for event membership in Rotary. Thank you, President.
All right, thank you very much, Vice President Kevin. I think we have noted that. Wow. As you've all seen, we have a very special guest in the house. I will ask Doreen. I hope Doreen is available. She will take us through the CV of our guest, and she'll introduce our guest and just let us know a little bit about her. Doreen? Okay.
President?
Yes, please.
I request Blair to read the guest speaker's CV.
Okay.
President.
Yes,
Yeah.
Blair.
Good evening, everyone. Let me take Doreen's place and introduce our guest speaker today. Kindly forgive my noisy background. Our guest speaker today is by the name of Rukshana Namuyimba. She's a seasoned communication specialist with over 15 years of experience, 7 years progressively in the sphere of corporate communication. Her expertise ranges from media and public relations, reputational risk management, stakeholder management, technical writing to events management. Some of the top brands whose reputation she has been responsible for managing include MTN Uganda, EBL Uganda, that is Uganda Breweries Limited, Vodafone Uganda, and Rukshana is currently managing communications and events for DFCU Bank since January 2017, and she offers communication consulting for James Associates partnerships, for James Associates and Partners, a Canadian-based immigration and settlement legal practice, pro bono. Rukshana also has a passion for community development with a focus on philanthropic and sustainability projects in underserved communities with at least 7 years experience in managing evaluation and implementation of sustainability and responsibility programs in the areas of education, health, and water and sanitation. She holds a bachelor's degree in arts, honors communications, literature. She majored in literature and English language. Her major is communications and her minor is literature and English language from Makerere University, with extensive training in her line of work, both in communications and the media. She is also a member of the Public Relations Association of Uganda, PRAU, and she's a mentor with the project Girls for Girls, supporting the next generation of women leaders. I believe our Rolai initiative will take very keen interest in our guest speaker today. She is a celebrated journalist and newscaster. Rukshana is a two-time winner of the RTV Academy Award, Best English Anchor, and the two-time winner of the Media Challenge Initiative under the Rosemary Nankabira Award. Friends, welcome with me, Rukshana Namuyimba.
Thank you very much, Blair. I saw Rukshana is on. I would like to ask everybody to mute your mics and let's listen to her. Rukshana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I noticed at the beginning there was a request for all videos to be off. Does that include mine?
No. Yours is the exception.
Okay, good. I was kind of hoping that it would be okay that my makeup is not properly done. But good evening, everyone. When Blair called me and said, my Rotaract Club would like you to talk about authenticity, I thought to myself, wow, now that's not a conversation that you hear every day. And I think it's really because the conversation on authenticity is a very uncomfortable one. It's uncomfortable because it generally shines the spotlight on us as individuals, but it is also as liberating as it is uncomfortable. So I hope that I make it uncomfortable enough for all of you, but I also hope that I make it as liberating as possible for all of you. Now, since we're talking about authenticity, it's only prudent that I start off with a story about myself. And just in case I bore you with the details, please raise your hand and I will stop. Yeah, I can be humble like that. So I was born at a time of instability, political instability, and my dad then was serving as a fighter pilot in the Idi Amin regime. And he had to flee with his very young family into exile, with me just a few months old. So our first port of landing was a border town, the Kenya-Uganda border town of Ruahaha. I don't know how many of you know where that is, but it's somewhere along the border. So when we were there, we met a Somali businesswoman. She was called Hawa Yusuf. Obviously, this story was as it was told to me by my parents, who, upon realizing that my dad was a Muslim and he seemed to have been of some sort of stature in his past life before he went into exile, she took a liking to my family, to my dad and his wife and his kids then. So she accommodated us and fed us for about 4 months before she moved us to Nairobi West, not to a place called Malakisi actually, where she rented a home for us for about 8 months. And even there, she made sure that we had food, we had a roof over our heads. And later on, she moved us into Nairobi West, where she had a series of other properties. And we lived there for a while until, of course, my father was able to find his feet. And he got into the cargo transportation business. Now, my dad at that point in time was about 24? He was quite young. My mom was 22. They were a very young couple. And I'm child number 4. So you can imagine. Okay, so my dad was 24 then, in a foreign land with a young family. But eventually he found his footing and he did well for himself. My mom was 22. She was a stay-home wife who basically studied designing just to pass time. And we generally lived a good life. We had more than we ever needed. We were renting a 4-bedroom apartment in Woodley Estates, that's along Gong Road, with a beautiful, beautiful rose garden. I still have fond memories of that rose garden. And we went to some of the best private schools then, and we were doing well. And life as we knew it changed. There's so much I've cut out there, otherwise we would need like the whole night. So fast forward, we had to come back home to Uganda, and with literally nothing. So one day I went to bed to the smell of white roses, and the next day I woke up in a stuffy 2-bedroomed small house in Masaka, attending a school on top of a hill where a number of children actually walked to school. So having known what it meant to live in wealth and abundance, I had to contend with living in lack. And it was very difficult for me, considering then I was in secondary school. I was surrounded by children from affluent families. And I knew that my parents were doing whatever it took to make sure that I get into King's College Budo and stay there. And for them, it was about giving us a great education. So my sister and I, my elder sister and I, we did our part. We read hard, and my parents basically broke their backs to ensure that whatever we did, whatever we needed to stay in school, we had. And sometimes that meant just school fees and basic necessities. That was just school fees and basic. So from wealth, there was a time we really didn't have much except love as a tight-knit family, each other, and the confidence that that season would come to pass. Yeah. So there I was, a Muslim girl in a predominantly Christian school from a little non-primary school in Masaka with very little to my name. Actually, the only thing I had that got me attention was my name because, well, with a name like Rukhsana, it will get you attention. It was pretty much a conversation starter. But I knew that my parents had given up so much to get me into Budo, but I was also aware that I felt very different and I felt a little bit lost. And it didn't help that I was teased quite a bit about my voice, especially when it broke, because at some point in time, my voice broke. So it became deep and husky, you know, like what teenage boys go through when they're getting into puberty. That sort of happened with my voice. So not only was I struggling with my perception of who I was in terms of social standing, I was generally struggling with the fact that I was very skinny and had a deep husky voice. But right there and then, in my very simplistic way, I decided early in life that I would not be defined by where I came from or what I didn't have that my peers had. And I decided that I had earned my spot in Budo and the rest was irrelevant. And I had to work with what I had. And that for me was the beginning of my journey to a place called authenticity. And later on, you will see why I actually call it a journey to a place. So what is authenticity? In my view, authenticity is really about being true to who you are. And if you lose my mic, please do let me know. It's about being true to who you are, and it's what gives you meaning and purpose. It's really about being comfortable with who you are. And sometimes you realize that you're different from other people, whether it is physically or the way you behave or the things that you like or your perceptions and your view of life can be different, but that's okay. Sometimes you will feel inadequate. You may even feel far from perfect when you compare yourself to others. And this could sometimes be in your family, in society, at the workplace, among your peers, in business. In my view, that's also okay, because I believe that we're not called to a life of perfection. We are, or we were created, we're not created to be like someone else. We have different desires, we have different passions, we have different giftings, we have different talents, and all these have been placed in us by God for a purpose. So we all have a different calling. And all this, the sum total of this, defines our values. So from where I sit, authenticity says, I cannot be a different me, but I can only be a better version of me. From where I sit, authenticity says, I am not perfect, and that is okay. From where I sit, authenticity says, I am not my circumstances or my situation. Those are just simply a part of my life journey, even when I don't understand where I am going with the circumstances and the situation. But authenticity also says that I know what I want, and I am not afraid to get it, even when it means going against the tide. And sometimes you will have to go against the tide. But also from where I sit, authenticity says, I am not afraid to speak my mind and show how I feel. Now, being true to who you are speaks to your values, okay? So your values are who you are at the core. They determine what is important to you, and that influences basically how you live, how you work, and how you interact with other people. But they should also ideally determine your priorities. And deep down, when you know what your values are and they're very clear to you, they're probably the measure that you will use to tell if your life is on the right track, if it is going where you want it to go. So that means that you cannot be comparing yourself to other people. It has to be about you. So from my personal perspective, I can share 3 professional values, because values, I categorize my values in terms of professional and personal. So my 3 topmost professional values are integrity. That is all you have when all has been said and done. You can't pay for it, you can't replace it, you can't, when it's gone, it's gone. So for me, that's high on my agenda as a value. Reliability, that's another professional value that I espouse, and professionalism. So whatever I do, wherever I do it, for me, I have to be professional. I have to be reliable. If I say I'm going to do something or I will not do something, I will not do something, but also integrity. People have to be able to count on my word. And those are my professional values. Now, my personal values are really about making a difference in life and finding a purpose and a meaning to my existence. Why am I here? I mean, I can't just be here to read the news, you know, or to make money, or to, I don't know, whatever. There has to be a greater purpose for why I exist, but also being dependable. Can the people who are relying on me count on me to be there for them? Those are just 3 of my personal values and my professional values. And the reason why it's important that we talk about values is because values are who you are at your core. We cannot talk about authenticity unless you have defined what it is that you stand for as an individual. So my 2 key takeouts as far as values are concerned is they're not static. They will sometimes evolve as you go through life. When I was in my 20s, career growth was high on my agenda. Financial stability was very high on my agenda. That doesn't mean it's not right now, but it's not up there on the list of things for me. Recognition was very important. And of course, with recognition came ambition. And of course, with recognition and ambition came competitiveness. Those were my values when I was in my 20s. Because when I looked at myself, I wanted to be somewhere, and this is how I was going to get there. But as I grow older, now those have sort of changed. Right now, it's family, it's finding meaning in my existence, and it's making a positive difference, you know? Those are more prominent for me. So it's important for us to note that values are not, they are certain values that are non-negotiable and they will not change, but there are some that have the ability to outlive their time and their purpose. So they are not static. And you have to be open-minded, and you have to be examining your life and yourself to be able to realize that your values are also changing. Yeah. And when the things that you do and the way that you do, the way that you behave, beg your pardon, match your values, life is usually good. You're generally in a place of content. Many of us find ourselves in a place where we are not content because there's a disconnect between the things that are important to us, that is our values, and what we are doing or how we are behaving. They are not congruent. So many times there will be a bit of an imbalance. And that brings us to the subject of success, because of course I was asked to speak about authenticity and success and its role in success. And the question I would ask is, what is success? You know, and it's just a shame that this session cannot be interactive. But I'm sure if all of you were able to respond, I would get very interesting answers in respect to what success is. But my take is that who you are at your core, which is the values that you espouse and the things that are important to you, will also determine what success looks like for you. And what that means is that success cannot be, in my considered opinion, cannot be a one-size-fits-all for all of us. And I do not believe that it is right for us to live by society's definition of success. But that's just my view. You can take it or leave it. When you look around, different people look at success differently. For some people, it's rising to the pinnacle of their career and they'll say, yes, I have made it, I am successful. For other people, it's about amassing wealth and they will do whatever it takes to actually make this money. For some people, it's about making a difference in the community where they live or where they come from. For others, it's being married and having a family. And you can tell, you know, which people look at success that way. Those are people who will normally look down on other people who have not achieved what they achieve as being unsuccessful. For some people, it's the academic credentials that you are able to pile up, you know. And for others, it's really the number of people whose lives you've changed along your life's path. For some people, it's about building a legacy that will outlive you. And for some people, it's about being popular. You know, there are people who will tell you if I'm popular, if I'm a celebrity or a celeb, like you guys call them these days, I have arrived. And that's their definition of success. And that's okay because it's probably congruent with the things that are important to them, with their values. So the late Zig Ziglar, in his book, Born to Win, said, and I generally agree with him, that success cannot be defined in one sentence. It comprises of so many things. And one could also argue that the definition depends on the individual, and therefore it's not a one-size-fits-all. And what might be success for you today, maybe in your 20s, when you're in your 30s or in your 40s, will not be success. I hope that sort of makes sense. And that is also aligned with the fact that our values change along the way, or they evolve along the way. So if you must remember anything, or at least my personal view, is that success is a social construct that consists of different ideals that are basically driven by societal norms and entrenched in our psyche by the media. So society will say that you're only successful if you have a job. Yeah. So they may not recognize you as successful if you're, for example, running a small business. It could be a kiosk or something. Yeah. They might think you're only successful if you have a job in a blue chip company. Success, society might also determine that you're only successful as a woman if you're married, for example, or have children, which I think is absolutely absurd. But generally speaking, societal norms sadly dictate, for example, like in my case, that a woman is only accomplished if she's married and has children. And many times, and you will see it both in your families and outside your families and in the media, the sort of conversations that go on around people that are not necessarily married or do not have children. Now, I happen to be one of those who has, through the years, been ridiculed for being unmarried. I have been called names. I have been described as beautiful but unlucky. I don't even know how they define my luck. But if I wasn't true to who I am as an individual, I kid you not, I'd probably have been pressured into getting married at the age of 32. And I'd probably be divorced by now and very, very annoyed, you know. So it takes knowing who you are and what is important to you for you to be able not to be swayed. So what is success? I believe that you define what success looks like for you based on what's important for you, your visions, your goals, your purpose. So it's really about you. You have to define what that is for you. So now that we've looked at what authenticity is, we've looked at values, we've looked at what I believe success should be, I think it's only prudent that we look at how then can we be authentic. Now, the reason I said that several years ago, 30 years ago, I started my journey, 35 years ago, I started my journey to a place called authenticity, speaks to the fact that not everyone is born authentic. It's actually something you can develop, yeah? And over the next couple of minutes, I'll just talk you briefly through how I believe you can build authenticity as a person. So how can you be authentic? The first things first, it begins with self-awareness. When you do not know who you are, you will be whatever people want you to be. You will not know when to say no. You will not know what jobs to say, I'm not going to take that job, and it's not from a place of pride, but because I know where I want to go. If you do not know who you are, or what your values are, or what you stand for, or what your purpose is, or where you're going, you will be swayed in different directions. If I could just quickly share an experience. As a teenager, I think I told you my story about Budo. As a teenager, I never tried to fit into Budo. I understood that I would never be like the other kids from Kampala Parents or Nakasero, because I came from a primary school on top of a hill where kids walked to school barefoot and sometimes had jiggers. I had never come to Kampala. So there is no way I was going to be like the kids who were born, raised in Kampala, went to Nakasero, went to Kampala Parents, went to Boogie Road. They were having all these sorts of conversations and I had no clue what was going on. I was never going to be like those kids, but I knew that I had earned my way into Budo. And that for me was enough. I can't say it was easy, but I had to tell myself every day that, Rukshana, you earned your seat in this classroom. Stop throwing pity parties just because you happen to grow up in another part of Uganda. And maybe it's not a big deal for young people these days, but it was a big deal for us back in the day, yeah? So for me, what that did is that I developed a very competitive spirit and I became as tough as nails. So for the 6 years that I was in Budo, the only thing that mattered to me was proving that I was good enough. It was proving that I had arrived, but it wasn't enough for me to just arrive. I needed to prove to myself and to prove to my peers, forget that they probably didn't even care, that I was just as good as them, you know? And the more I made steps at succeeding, because for me that was success then, the more my confidence grew. The more I stopped paying attention to the fact that I had come from a little known village or a little known school in Masaka. And a lot of that shaped a part of who I became as an adult. I can't say that it's all positive because sometimes I can come off as a bit, what's the word? Sometimes I've been called names like being a snob, but maybe that's also the negative effect of having gone through a system like that. But at least I am aware. So the next step to becoming authentic is accepting yourself for who you are. And that means the good, the bad, and the ugly. Once you know yourself and you're true to yourself, you will know the positive things about you. You will know the negative things about you. And they will be glaring. They will actually be glaring. But I think the important thing about authenticity is for you not to be too hard on yourself. And this, for me, is a lesson I am still learning. And that's why I said, for me, it's a journey to a place called authenticity. And it's a daily mental attitude adjustment, even for me. This includes accepting my flaws as part of a bigger picture and as an opportunity for me to become better, because I know I can become better, whether it is from a relationship perspective, from a work perspective, as a mother, I can actually become better. But being comfortable with who I am or with who you are requires that you accept that you are not perfect. And this is where I have to struggle every day to remind myself, Rukshana, you are not perfect and you can never be perfect. Now, this is very, very difficult for me because as a perfectionist, which I know is a flaw in me, in the workplace, for example, the realization that I'm not perfect, when I have to remind myself every time that I'm not perfect, is teaching me how to sometimes be more compassionate and a little bit more patient with those who may fall short of my expectations. Because then I'm putting a mirror in front of myself and I'm saying, Rukshana, if you're not perfect, then why the hell are you expecting perfection from other people? That's not fair. But what it has also done is that it's placing me in a position of sharing my life with others, if only to help them become a little bit better. Because there's good in every one of us. And the more we share that, the more we help other people become better and the more satisfaction we get, depending on what is important for us. Now, for someone like me who's looking for a sense of purpose, that's really important. Point number 3, you have to follow your gut as you're building authenticity. Your gut or your intuition is that inner voice which sort of helps you make decisions and informs your actions. Now, women are generally said to have that more developed than men. Don't ask me why, I do not know. But in terms of ethical decisions, your gut is your moral compass. It's what guides you in making decisions. So whenever you feel that something is a little bit off, chances are it's a little bit off. You need to listen to it. Now, the more you listen to your gut, the more the skill of listening to your gut develops, if that even makes sense. Point number 4, in order for you to be authentic, because you know that you're not perfect and you'll probably fall short periodically, you need to learn how to ask for help. Getting help when you're in need is never a sign of weakness. For some people, it could appear like a sign of weakness, but for someone who's truly authentic, because they know that they are not perfect and they know their strengths and their weaknesses, they will not have trouble asking for help, because it means that they acknowledge that they're not superhuman and they recognize that someone else could have skills and talents that they do not have. And when you do that, people tend to respect you and warm up to you, and it builds relationships. And life is all about relationships, building relationships, whether it's in the workplace or on the personal front. That's what life is about, building relationships. So you need to learn to ask for help. Along with asking for help, it's important that you learn authentic people express their thoughts and their feelings. If your opinion matters to you, then you talk about it. Sometimes you might get into trouble for that, but that's when you learn that it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it. And that's a skill that you have to develop as well as you go along. But authentic people are generally comfortable speaking their mind and communicating when they have a problem or when they're appreciative of something. And this may be a bit difficult for most people depending on their cultural orientation. But sometimes you'll find that generally speaking, when you speak your mind openly, sometimes you may not necessarily be very popular because people might perceive you a wrong way. But if you're authentic, then you'd be comfortable doing that regardless. You just need to learn how to do it in such a way that people do not necessarily feel uncomfortable. And that's something that I am still on my journey to learning to do. Now, in my case, I find that speaking my mind, especially when I'm not happy, sometimes makes me come off as a little bit brash. But the beauty about it is you never have to second guess how I feel. You will know without a shred of doubt that I am not happy, or I'm happy. And this is probably what makes it a lot more easy for authentic people to be candid, because they speak their minds. And I think the last thing, as far as this is concerned, is you must allow yourself to be vulnerable. And that's almost a default setting. And this is one of those things that at an individual level, I have struggled with for a very, very long time, resulting in me building walls around me, because I generally have walls around me. And it takes a certain level of trust for you to allow yourself to be vulnerable, because it requires that you would sometimes share very personal information about yourself and also being open about your flaws. But it's a process, and it does not need to happen with everyone. Just because you are vulnerable does not mean, just because you want to be authentic does not mean you have to go and share your issue with everyone. Of course, you have to be wise about it. Yeah. So you pick people that you can trust, and it will help build relationships. Another experience I can share as far as this is concerned is, for the longest time, while there was a part of me that always wanted to influence change and speak into the lives of young people, I knew that I would need to reveal more about me and my life. So I held back, because I'm generally a private person. Despite being a media person, I'm a private person. And it was until I read a book called Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes, and I would encourage as many of you to read it. I read that book at the turn of 2018, and it changed my life. I realized that I cannot keep building walls around me. If I want to influence and speak into the lives of young people, then I need to be out there in their spaces. So what I started doing was making time for speaking opportunities such as these. Previously, I would get a phone call and I'd say, I'm busy, because I'm generally a terribly busy person. But I started creating time because it was important for me. But I also got the confidence to say no to anything that I felt wasn't in line with what I believed or in line with what I wanted to do. So just because I like speaking to people doesn't mean that I speak at all speaking engagements. I will choose them carefully, especially if they are aligned to where I believe I need to be impacting. I also started appreciating the need to ask for help. But more importantly, I learned that authenticity is the greatest form of self-love. So I'm happy to say that I am doing well on my journey to this place called authenticity. I definitely have not arrived, but I'm doing well. So the second part of the discussion was around success. What makes authenticity a recipe for success, whatever that may mean to you? Yeah, and I'll go through this very quickly because I notice our time is first spent. When you know who you are, what matters to you, that is your values, what your purpose is, where you're going, that is your vision, making decisions becomes a lot easier. You're not swayed by other people's thoughts and opinions because you're clear on your agenda. So decisions are easier to make, and they're solid, and you take responsibility for them, even when they are wrong decisions, because sometimes we will make wrong decisions, but you take responsibility for them. You do not blame other people for your mistakes. And that's a key recipe in success. In my earlier career, I worked in the bank that I now work at DFCU. And in a space of about, 1 year and 2 months, I had risen to the position of a customer service manager at the executive branch then, which was Acacia. And I was basically being fast-tracked for management. But I knew that I wanted to get into marketing and advertising. That's where I wanted to go. I hadn't studied that because I had studied communication, but I wanted to get into marketing. So an opening came up at MTN, and the then chief commercial officer was looking for a personal assistant to replace the one who had been his PA, who had now moved on to manage public relations within the organization. So I saw it as an opportunity to work with one of the best marketing minds in this country then. So I took the job, and my friends struggled to understand how I would leave a bank. Now, many of you are young people, but 20 years ago, working in the bank was the ish. You know, you'd walk around with your IDs, you'd hang out with your IDs just so everyone knew you worked in a bank. In the village where you came from, you are the most important person because you worked in a bank. You know, it was very prestigious. So people were wondering, how do you leave a bank where you have manager to your title and you go to a telecom? Yes, it was MTN, it was a great brand, but you're going to be a personal assistant. Basically, you're going to be a secretary. It just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to my friends. It didn't make sense to people generally. But I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to get into the marketing world. And I knew that I had an opportunity to work with Eric Van Veen then. Sorry, my lights have gone off. I had an opportunity to work with Eric Van Veen then. And it was an opportunity to learn. So I ignored the voices in my head and outside my head. And I took the job. And fast forward 1 year within MTN, working with Eric Van Veen as a personal assistant, I moved into corporate relations. And it was easy for me to do that because when I went into work for my boss then, who was the chief commercial officer, I made it very clear. I said, I have taken this job as a personal assistant because this is what I want for myself. I want to kickstart a career in marketing, and I believe that I can learn as much as I can from you. Now, the ability to speak confidently about what I wanted and even having that clarity was important for me. And it helped me because he then exposed me to projects I would never have been able to get exposed to if all I was doing was booking calendars for meetings and pushing papers. But because he knew this is my dream, this is where I'm going, and I spoke about it, he actually channeled me in that direction, and he really helped me. So 1 year working with him as a PA, I moved into corporate relations within MTN. The rest is history, yeah? Like they read out, I've managed the reputation of some of the best brands in Uganda, including MTN, UBL, Vodafone, and now DFCU Bank. But it started somewhere. Trusting your gut and following it makes it a lot easier for you to know, for example, who is on your side and who isn't. In the workplace, there'll be lots of politics. In the relationships that we have with our friends, whether they are romantic or platonic, there are all sorts of people. But trusting your gut tells you, it helps you know who you can trust, professional or otherwise. And it makes it easier for you to follow the prompting of the Spirit. If, for example, you're a Christian, I know not all of us are Christians, but if you're a Christian, it makes it easy for you to follow the prompting of the Spirit. And you're also able to discern the seasons and the times. It becomes a lot easier, and you know that it is my time to move from here to another place, you know? So listening to your instincts saves you a lot of trouble when dealing with people, and it also makes it easier for you to make decisions. Point number 3, authentic people or leaders generally attract great people, whether it's at a professional level or at a personal level. When people know that they can trust you to speak your mind and not be two-faced, when they know that you're not afraid to be human or to admit mistakes like they do, then it's easier for them to relate with you. It's easier for them to build trust. And all human relations are built on trust. That is what they thrive on. And you need trust to be able to succeed. You need human relations to be able to succeed. You cannot go a journey on your own, whatever success means for you. Point number 3, when you're open to new experiences, when you're honest about the fact that you have a weakness or you have weaknesses, when you do not know everything and you're open and you're honest about the fact that you do not know everything, then it's a lot easier to learn new things. It's a lot easier to ask people to help you. It's a lot easier to ask people to give you constructive feedback. And constructive feedback will help you become a better person. In short, it will help you succeed, whatever success looks like for you. If you're true to yourself, you will be open to feedback and you will be open to learning. You will seek help when you need it, and you will become a better person at a professional and a personal level. And this is a constant thing. You never arrive at this place. It's constantly changing. And my final point is that authentic people are accountable for their actions, like I intimated, and their choices. You will make mistakes or you will misjudge situations. But because you do not blame this on other people or have any regrets, it is easier for you as an authentic person to take stock of where and why you failed and then do better. So because authentic people are not too hard on themselves, when they make mistakes, it's easier for them to pick up valuable lessons. They will ask themselves, what can I learn from this experience or this situation? What is it that I can learn that I can take to my next experience? Whether it's in the place of work or it's in a relationship or whatever it is. And you use those key learnings for, to make your next decisions, yeah? So in closing, I'd like to say that authenticity for me is the highest form of self-love. And I hope that when you think about it, you will say to yourself that I'm not perfect, but I trust that God perfects all things concerning me, because he does, and that's what I believe as a Christian. It is also my hope that when you think about your life, and start beating yourself over the fact that you're not as successful as the other people, maybe that you are in school with, that you work with, or whatever, you will remember that the only person you need to be better than is yourself. You cannot try to be better than someone else because you are on a different journey for a different purpose. So it doesn't make sense. But it is also my hope that as you pursue success, whatever that may be for you, because we all want to succeed in life, you will see the wisdom in trusting God with all your heart and not leaning on your own understanding. Because when we acknowledge God in everything that we do, He directs our path. And that is the infallible word of God, whether we believe it or not. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Rukshana. You're like a pastor preaching, so I've had quite a number of people online, and I think they're saying this is a wonderful presentation. I hope we can go on for hours and hours, but unfortunately our time is fast spent. So I'm going to ask those of you with questions to please keep them as brief as possible, and you can put some of them through to the chat group. I see there was a question from Ivan. He says, how do you do with critics like you're beautiful but unlucky? Interesting. Another question from our Vice President Kevin. How do you deal with abused and or exploited vulnerability?
Okay, so okay, I hope I
So
remember all those questions.
I hope, are you writing them down?
I will write them down, I suppose.
Okay, all right. Then there's another question from Emran. The question is, where do you draw the line between being authentic and trying to be different or innovative? Since innovation comes with a lot of uncertainty.
Okay, can I take the questions now?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll start with the question about being beautiful but unlucky. I don't remember the first half of the question, but in my mind, initially it disturbed me quite a bit. That's the truth. It disturbed me quite a bit because I'm human. So I started thinking, okay, maybe there's something wrong with me. And then I said, Rukshana, there's nothing wrong with you. Just because you're not married does not mean, look at all the other things that you have achieved that some people have not achieved. So are you going to go by the measures that have been, are you going to use the SI unit of the media, or the tabloids to determine whether you are successful just because you're not married? No, you're not. So eventually it stopped. It was something that I just let go past my head. I was like, you know what? I'm not married, but look, I have done A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I'm happy. Do I want to get married? Certainly, I want to get married. Has it happened now? No. Am I going to beat myself about it? Heavens, no. I am going to live with where I am right now. And when it comes, I'll thank God for that. So, and that's that. How do you deal with vulnerability, the abuse of vulnerability, and don't see what the other thing was. But how do you deal with that? I think what will happen is as we become more vulnerable, the truth is sometimes we will get our fingers burnt. People that we trust, people that we open up to, people that we share our lives with will sometimes abuse that. And I think the important thing is not for us, if it's important for us to be open, then even when that happens, what we need to do is become a little bit wiser in terms of being careful who we choose to open up to. But shutting down is never an option, because then what you're doing is you are changing yourself and adjusting to the circumstances and the situation. And you can do it for a while because it feels safer, but you will never really feel comfortable because it's not who you are at the core. If who you are at the core is about sharing your life, then you will never feel happy being closed off just because someone abused it. So take the learning, look at yourself and say, what is it that I did? Did I trust maybe too soon? What could have been my contribution to this abuse? Or maybe it's just some people are just bad, And then next time, look out for some telltale signs and maybe be a bit more careful when you're doing it. Yeah, that would be my take. Then there was a question around authenticity. Unfortunately, I cannot even see the question.
Well,
But it
it
had
was, where do you draw the line between being authentic and trying to be different or innovative? So, because since it comes with a lot of uncertainty.
Okay, so the thing about innovation or being innovative or innovation does not speak to who you are at the core. It's not a behavior. It doesn't inform your behavior. Yeah, authenticity is about you as the person, the values and the things that you espouse as an individual, the things that are important to you, and those are two very distinct things. Yeah, and sometimes in trying to be authentic or in developing your authentic side, obviously you will be different because you will tend to go against the norm many times. Yeah, but you have to, and what then happens is innovation could then be the end result. Yeah, so for example, if I'm a young person, I know that the general behavior or the general expectancy is I'll finish school, I'll go through university, I'll get a job. But I can decide, you know what, I'm a creative person. What I want to do is maybe technology, and I'm brilliant, and there are all these ideas I have in my head. And I believe I don't need to get a university degree to do that. Then I'll probably decide, I'm going to be different. I'll not go to university. And I know someone who actually dropped out of school when everyone else thought, how the hell did you drop out of school? And they never got a university degree. But they're one of the most brilliant and innovative people I know in the tech space. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it has to start with, what is it that is important to you? If it is so important to you, then it's okay for you to actually be different. Yeah. And that will most likely mean that you will do things that are very different from other people. But it could also mean that in being innovative, you will, I've lost my train of thought, but I hope I've sort of answered that question.
All right, I hope that question was answered, Emran. Then there's a question from Duhuchire. I hope it's not the Duhuchire we all know. The question is, how do you deal with feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt?
How do you deal with feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt? One, they shouldn't be ignored. I think it's just important to look at them objectively. What is it that is causing the feeling of inadequacy and self-doubt? Is it something that someone has said? Is it because you're comparing yourself to someone else or to other people? Is it coming from a place of, in my mind, this is what I want to have, this is what I wanted to have achieved by this point in time, and I haven't yet achieved it? So getting to the bottom of what's bringing on these feelings is the beginning of you dealing with the feelings objectively, because you must be objective about how you deal with these feelings. Yeah. And if it's about the fact that you're comparing yourself to your peers, maybe they have jobs, you're still on the street looking for a job, or they're married, or they have kids, or whatever it is, or they have a good job, blah, 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 or they're running a business and you don't, then you might want to take a step back and ask yourself, how important is this to me? And what is it that is informing this feeling? Is it because society dictates this? It's only when you get to the underlying cause of those feelings of inadequacy that you're actually able to tackle them. So you must have an honest conversation with yourself. And this is not something anyone can do for you. You'd have to have a conversation. One of those come to Jesus conversations with yourself. And many times when you're honest with yourself and you search deep within your heart, you will see what is causing this, and you will also find the solutions.
Okay, I hope that question was answered. There's a question from one of our club members. He says, what advice do you have for the youth who are easily swayed by FOMO, or fear of missing out?
Fear of missing out.
Yes, on social media and taking fake lifestyles in.
Faking lifestyles to fit in.
Yeah, to fit
Quite
in.
frankly, my heart goes out to young people. Yeah, because it's not easy. I mean, your lives, okay, yeah, not your lives, but young people's lives, and even some of our lives are literally lived on social media. So a lot of our perceptions about life are shaped by what we see on social media. So you can't really blame them for, being easily swayed. But I think sometimes you have to take a step back from social media and realize that away from social media, who am I as an individual? Because a lot of us, the truth of the matter is, we're different people in real life. Social media sort of gives us the opportunity to position ourselves in a way that makes us feel better about ourselves. Yeah. And in so doing, we make other people feel terrible about themselves. So if you're as a young person, occasionally you need to take a step back, because you can't live your life on social media 24/7. Yeah. You can't form your belief system around social media. So take a step back. Now, it may be difficult when you're a lot younger, but as you grow, you need to take a step back and ask yourself, what is it that matters to me? What is important to me? Where do I want to go with my life? How am I going to get there? Will social media get me there? Is the persona that I have created on social media, is that the real me? Am I comfortable? Is it going to get me to where I want to go? Assuming you know where you want to go. And hopefully as a young person, you know where you want to go. Because I know that the challenge with youth is that you think you have your entire life ahead of you. Until you clock 40 and you realize, God, where did my life go? And you've done nothing with your life, especially in this day and age. So take a step back and ask yourself, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Where do I see myself? Who am I? Is social media going to help me get there? Is the information, the content that I'm consuming on social media, is it going to get me there? The superficial friends I have on social media, are they adding value or are they taking away value? Because if they're not adding any real tangible value, they're not going to help. So you must have a real tough conversation with yourself as a young person.
Okay, thank you very much, Roxana. I am going to ask PAG Michael Ojok to please turn on his video and ask his question.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. I'd like to thank the presenter. This presentation has been very, very good, especially inciting to our Rotary Club. I basically have one comment and one question. It goes to your third point on first presentation, which was ethical decision, which is very good because that is a very strong hold on us as in the Rotary fraternity, and that is in line with what we follow. Question goes to your other first part of your presentation. You talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. It takes me back to my long days of the film industry. You mentioned it when you brought in knowing yourself. Would you please expand more on that one, especially on that aspect of the good, the bad, and the ugly of knowing yourself? Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Patrick. I don't know how much, Michael, sorry, not Patrick, Michael. I don't know how much time we have. But in a nutshell, knowing yourself is, like how you do a SWOT analysis. We do a lot of these things in the workplace or for projects, but we hardly do them on ourselves as individuals. So it's about doing a SWOT analysis on your life. Those 4 quadrants, you have your strengths here, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and whatever else it is. So as an individual, you have to think about yourself and say, what are my strengths? If my strength, for example, is, my strength is being candid. Maybe I'm candid, I speak my mind, I don't know, several things. What are my weaknesses as an individual? And sometimes they may not even be obvious to you. So what you can do is, the friends that you have around you, it is when you seek constructive feedback from them, they can actually put a mirror in front of you and you're able to realize what your weaknesses are. So it's important that the people we surround ourselves with are people that add value. Yeah. So you can ask your friends, guys, what are some of the things that you think I need to work on as an individual? And I've sometimes gotten feedback. And when we're getting feedback, sometimes it doesn't feel very comfortable because it makes you feel, but sometimes I've been told, man, Roxana, you need to tone down. Huh? You need to tone down. Yes, you're straight talking, but please be a bit more sensitive when you're talking to someone else, because not everyone takes criticism in a certain way. Yeah. So engaging with other people will help you become more aware of yourself. You have family members, you have friends. If you're in a place of work, obviously there are opportunities for you to have discussions with your peers or your supervisor, and they will give you feedback. as long as they see that you are open to receiving the feedback. Yeah. Then at the end of the day, you're actually able to know, as Rukshana, I know what my weaknesses are. I know what my strength, I know what the good is. I know what the ugly is. I know what the bad is. But I also know the opportunities that I have to actually change that. Your question on ethics wasn't exactly clear. So I don't know if it was just a comment or if it was actually a question. The ethical part and the decisions, but I think it was a comment.
No, it was just a comment. Just to tell you that that is in line as in Rotary. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, thank you very much, Rukshana. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. We've gone way beyond time, but I think when you have such an eloquent guest speaker, it's important to give her as much time as possible to say her mind and speak her piece, because this is like a podium in church. You know, she has all the time in the world to say everything. Rashada, I just have one thing to say. There's something you mentioned earlier regarding integrity. In the industry where I work, which is insurance, I see a lot of instances where integrity comes into play. And as a matter of fact, as one of the values of our company, the first value is integrity. And I know you work in a bank, so maybe are there times when you struggle with being an integral person, especially with your job? Because I'm sure there must be some times where you've had a few instances where there might have been. I don't know if you've had something like that.
Yes, because I live in the real world. There are times when you feel like, okay, this is it's a bit not exactly what I'd be comfortable doing, or not necessarily doing. It's more around I'd probably not be very comfortable saying it. But yes, I do get those moments. And how I deal with them, without necessarily telling you what those moments are, how I deal with those moments is I have learned to sort of compartmentalize, because then you realize that sometimes you may not necessarily be entirely in control of your life by virtue of what you do or what you say. So yeah, sometimes you just ride the tide. And I mean, there are times I've cracked jokes and said, hey, man, I may not go to heaven on account of this one, but I go back and I repent. So yeah, obviously we all face challenges, but that notwithstanding, when you know that it's something that's important to you, then you try as much as possible to stick with it.
Okay, wow, wonderful. Thank you very much. I think I probably needed to hear that, because I had a recent case with the job that I do. I usually have a lot of issues to do with integrity, and sometimes you have to stand by what you say and say, you know what, it's no, and that's it. And yeah, there are people that hate you for it, and then there are those that will respect you for it. I'd like to say thank you very much. I'm going to ask our past president, Richard Mutabazi. I believe he's online to move a vote of thanks. And then I'll ask our sergeant at arms, Tom, to take over right after that. Richard? Hey, wow, seems Richard's not online. I'm going to ask ADRR Jojo Kavia Caesar to please move a vote of thanks.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I would like to appreciate our speaker today for fear of saying or pronouncing your name wrong. Thank you so much for sparing the time, for being very honest and authentic indeed. I've really, really enjoyed this fellowship. It was not, I don't know if it's just informative, I think it's truly life-changing. I like the honesty, the fact that you also mentioned the back end, you're not just on the rosy bit, you also mentioned the back end, and it's real. So that's what I've liked about it. So thank you so much for sparing the time and sharing with us so deeply. Yeah, we hope you can join us more often. And if you're not a Rotarian, the fraternity is happy to have people like you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jojo. I think that was well done. I'm going to ask our Sergeant at Arms, Past President Tom Ayebare, to take over. Chana, you can stay around. You probably say hi to a couple of people there in the group. I see there are a number of comments because there's so many people that have tuned in to listen to you. I think they didn't get enough of you on the TV, but yeah. Tom, please take over. Is Tom there? Sergeant at Arms Tom, this is your moment. So I think you need to collect some money from a number of people on the chat forum. Okay, well, Tom is not available. I'm going to ask Angela to please take over Tom's duty for the night.
Thank you, President. Good evening, everyone. Let's recognize the following Rotarians, Rotaractors, and guests who have managed to join us today. We've had 4 Rotary clubs. That's 1 is our mother club, Kampala South, 2 Sunrise Kampala, Asia Sunset, and Arch Club of Kampala. In Rotary clubs, we have 10. 1 is Rotary Club of Makerere University, Victoria, Kololo, Mpinda, Kampala Nalia, Tengera, Bugolowi, Bukoto, Kampala City, Mbarara. We've had 7 guests. That's Helena, Christine, Mohiri, Rachel, Solomon, Sharifa, and Isaac. And President, among our guests, we've had those who have managed to promise us dollars. Our treasurer is Rashida Nasanga, and her phones are 0773-366602. And yeah, thanks to everyone who has joined us today.
Okay, thank you very much, Angela. I believe you've done a good job, although not so well. We were expecting to collect quite a bit of money from a lot of the people that have joined in today. But for those of you that have actually made promises to put in that lucky dollar, please make sure you send it through. The phone number to send to is on the screen in the chat forum. I'd like to say thank you to everyone that has joined us today. We don't take it for granted that you guys are with us, and I apologize for going over and beyond time. But I think, like I said earlier, with the kind of guest speaker that we had today, I think it was really important that we at least extend the time just a little bit. Yeah. So with that, I call fellowship to an end. I'm going to ask President Hillary from the Rotary Club of Changira to give us the final toast. President Hillary.
President Keith. Thank you everyone who has attended fellowship. It was so informative. I loved listening to Luciana speak and learned a lot from her. For the wonderful fellowship we have had, for those with a drink, please raise it as we toast Rotary International.
Rotary
the world over.
Rotary world over. Thank you, President.
President,
thank you very much, President Hillary.
President, before we log off,
yes.
I would like to remind us that if we could at least all turn on our cameras and have a picture for PR and reporting template. Derek, are you online and able to capture the screenshot?
Oh yeah, let's do this.
Hold on. I need to put on my chain.
Blair, I love your hat.
Blair with the old man's hat.
Take a blinder hat.
What's the world over?
So we are going to take the picture in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Smiles, guys. All right, thank you.